Welcome to the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the psychology of darker desires. I'm Em, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm a psychosexuality nerd with a background in psychology, sociology, medical science, and Tantra. I'm also in a 24/7 collared relationship, and I created this podcast with the mission of humanizing kinksters. Join me here for one-on-one, in-depth conversations as we explore the fascinating world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. If you love what we're doing here in the erotic realm, I'd like to ask you a quick favor. Can you follow and rate the show wherever you listen? It helps the show reach more people like you. And if you haven't yet, I'd love if you could subscribe to my Substack, Psychology of Desire. This is where I go even deeper into the science and symbolism of desire, archetypes, and erotic evolution. You'll get access to articles, unique surveys and research, and behind-the-scenes access to everything I'm building. Simply visit psychologyofdesire.substack.com. I'll see you there. And now, for today's episode. The following conversation invites you into the erotic world of a woman whose body rewrote her understanding of desire. Thinker is a sensualist, a rope bottom, and a hyper-climaxer, someone who experiences orgasm in layered levels, sometimes dozens or even hundreds of times in a single session. In this episode, she shares how a deeply religious upbringing shaped her early erotic life, and how sensual awakening in adulthood transformed everything she believed about pleasure, safety, and the body. We explore the psychology of hyper-responsiveness, the mindfulness techniques that deepen her experiences, and the 4 levels of orgasm that guide her pleasure. Thinker invites us into a world where awareness becomes arousal, sensation becomes language, and climax becomes a form of embodied liberation. Enjoy. But before we dive in, just a quick announcement. For those that are fascinated by the female orgasm, you would be interested to know that I'm releasing a major new Psychology of Desire case file this week. This will be an in-depth report on the female orgasm, grounded in data from over 300 participants of the Her Climax Code survey that I did a few months ago. If you want early access to this and the findings, subscribe now at psychologyofdesire.substack.com. I'll see you there. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have with me Thinker. Welcome, Thinker.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So let's start with the world beyond eroticism. What fills your days when you're not immersed in kink? Any passions or creative pursuits that you love?
Absolutely. I'm one of those people that I feel like I'm really passionate about a lot of things. I like to go to the gym, lift weights. I'm passionate about swimming and try to get into the pool a couple times a week. I love to read. I love to try new recipes and go to new restaurants and watch movies. And I'm one of those people that I'm just constantly on the go, always have something planned, having something going on. I'm really not a sit around the house type person very much, but I just really get really involved in anything that I spend my time doing.
Amazing. Sounds like a lot of fun. I love food as well, a big foodie.
Yes, definitely.
Now let's get into the fun stuff, your sexuality.
Okay.
If you had to sum up your sexuality, how would you describe it?
I would say I'm still exploring that. I spent most of my life in a very religious setting, belief system. It was only within the last 2 years that I decided to break out of that. And I have since discovered that I'm bi. I'm thinking I'm probably pansexual as well, but it's still very much, I'm still exploring, trying new things, and really I see my sexuality as very much an evolving situation.
Okay, I'm really curious to hear. So what happened 2 years ago that led to you breaking out of that religious environment?
Oh, absolutely. I actually, it happened probably 2 years before that when I turned 40.
Mm-hmm.
So about 4 years ago, I thought to myself, I'd been married and had a really bad marriage, and just a very non-sexual marriage. We pretty much lived as roommates for about the 10 years we were married. Mostly on the side of my husband was not interested in sex in any ways. I think in many ways he would now be probably more of an on the asexual spectrum.
Mm.
But at the time, we were very religious. And so it was like, must get married, must have sex. And then he had no desires for sex. And so it was not a great marriage. And I was married at 26 as a virgin, and he was as well. And that
Mm.
was the only sexual content I'd ever had in my life. And that was not very much. And so when I hit 40, I had my crisis, my midlife crisis was, what happened if I was to die tomorrow and the only sex I've ever had is with my ex, which was bad sex,
Mm.
when it wasn't very often. So I decided at that point that I was going to start thinking about maybe overthrowing my entire belief system and pursuing, because you hear in them, in books and movies and everyone talking about how wonderful sex is. And I was like, I've never had that experience. Do I really want to die without having the experience? So it took me 2 years to really convince myself that I was willing to overthrow my belief system in
Mm.
order to have.
Mm.
And anyway, I met somebody, dated for a couple of months, and then I said, let's have sex. And it was really, it was very disappointing sex.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Climax within about 30 seconds of us having sex.
Mm-hmm.
And then he fell. And I remember thinking, really? Okay, this is better than, no, it's not better. This can't be all that it is. And I actually went on a date with someone who suggested I look at FetLife. I'd never even thought about kink before
Mm.
or anything related to it. And so I got on, and the rest is and now I'm now I'm here. So
Mm-hmm.
2 years on Fet has been, fortunately, I found some really good mentors and some really good people to really help me experience a lot of kinks and a lot of different things. And I have much clearer sense now than I did of what I like and what I don't like, even though I still think I'm very much still on the exploring path. But I've had a very sexually awakening last 2 years of my life.
Incredible. I'm so happy for you. Can you tell us what's changed over those 2 years? So, where are you at now with your sexuality? What's happening?
Absolutely. So when I first joined FET, and I really thought I really thought I was a sub, because I have a job where I'm in a leadership capacity, and I really felt like in sex I really wanted to be not the one making all decisions. I really wanted to have someone else in control. And I tried at various times over the last 2 years, 5 different more sub relationships, and every single one failed because I realized I don't actually like somebody telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in bed. So then for a while I was very much identifying as a switch. Um, and I still would put myself more in the switch category, but I really like to choose when I switch and how I switch and what that happens. At the moment, I'd be more thinking that I'm more of as I contact people or chat with people at various events, I usually tell people that I'm kind of an equal pleasure seeker. I appreciate climaxing and climaxing a lot. And I appreciate when they do as well. But if they don't, I no longer take it personally, which I used to do. And so it's up to them if they climax or not. So that's not very much a sub. So I definitely have moved away from that, although I still do sometimes with specific people like to be more submissive, although other times not as much. I've never really been in the DOMs or even topping. I haven't explored that very much. I don't have much interest in it, but stranger things have happened in the last 2 years, so that might be something to pursue at some point. But at the moment, I'm kind of on the equal pleasure, enjoy the experience.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned climax just now, so let's talk about it.
Yeah.
How has your
Yeah.
relationship with orgasm itself changed over the last 2 years?
Uh, that's huge. That's where I would put most of my thoughts on what really has changed. Um, in my marriage, I remember climaxing, and I remember thinking it was relatively easy to climax. I had over the years I've been divorced. I was thinking like 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
So during the 13 years of pretty much, 13 years of celibacy, or anyway, I did masturbate, and I usually masturbate until I climax, and then I'd be done. I figured, woohoo, one climax, off I go with my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the very first Dom that I met was really big into seeing if I could climax multiple times. And so he used to give me homework to masturbate and keep masturbating and climaxing until I got tired, I guess you could say. And I discovered, or he helped me discover, this is the only positive thing out of this, out of that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that I could climax a lot over and over and over and over and over again. And I mean, at the time, I think I was like, my max was about 30 climaxes in probably 20 minutes.
Wow.
And I have over the last 2 years have only increased the number of climaxes I'm able to achieve, because I've been a lot more sexually active and much more consistently sexually active. And also somewhere also with that first Dom that I worked with, he also, one of his big fetishes was women squirting. I'd never squirted before. I never even really knew about it. Again, from a very vanilla religious background. So I remember the first time I ever squirted was with him, and I was like, oh, that was kind of fun. And probably the first year that I was on FET, I was climaxing a lot, but I wasn't really squirting. And now I'm to the I guess, the stage where I can climax hundreds of times and squirt, not hundreds of times, but can do quite a bit of squirting as well. So maybe 100 climaxes during sex, or 200 climaxes during sex, and 20 times squirting. So, so they go very much hand in hand. And I will only squirt when I'm incredibly aroused and where I've climaxed quite a bit to get that point. But so those are definitely, I feel like somebody at a BDSM party I was at one time said, you know what your superpower is? Your superpower is climaxing. And I was like, oh, yes, that is. It's true. Who knew that was to be proud about? Apparently my superpower is to climax and squirt as well.
What an incredible superpower. I have to say, that sounds like the
Right?
best type of homework that your Dom gave you as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it
Mm-hmm.
was not a successful Dom sub situation. That was the very first one. But the thing he did is he did help me to get in much better touch with my own body and what, I mean, and masturbating. I'd masturbate once and figured that was it. I had absolutely no idea I had that ability to climax over and over and over and over again.
It's amazing what can happen when we explore our bodies by ourselves as well as with other people, right?
Right? Oh,
Mm.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I also, I don't know if this, well, I'll mention, I've also discovered, at least for me, that I have different types of climaxes, not even just
Mm.
areas.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can climax really on touch, any kind of, so climaxing, and I can climax from my nipples being touched, or I can climax from kissing, I can climax from penetration, I can really climax from almost anything. Really, if I'm thinking about it and I want to participate in that. But there's also, for me at least, there's levels of climaxing. So there's a very, and I don't know if you want me to get into that at the moment, but
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
happy
Go.
to.
Go for it.
Okay. I consider them to have three levels, although the third one, it might be fourth level there too. But the very, very beginning level for me, their climaxing is my body will shake, and I will feel pleasure, obviously, but it's more of just a light shaking of my body. Um, Second level is they're more, I always call them like deeper in my core, where my whole body will move, and I will just feel a much deeper engagement in those climaxes. Squirting usually happens on that second level, as well as the third, but that is really where I'm really engaged, and I'm really like my whole body's involved in it more than just shaking. And then the third level is I usually will go after I've been in third level climaxes. I feel like they start in almost like my lower stomach, my groin area, and they just completely fill my body. I will usually come off the bed a couple inches, or depending on what I'm in, or if I'm in rope or bondage or whatever, I will definitely like try to levitate myself out of wherever I am. I often will go nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And so I've currently, I very much enjoy bondage. And so if I'm in bondage and I am nonverbal, I've worked out a series of, hand signals that I can use if needed in that nonverbal. Squirting very much happens in that third one. I'm usually, I guess the fourth stage would be then I often go into subspace, and I can hit subspace very, very easily because I'm climaxing so much. I usually have a tendency, once I go nonverbal, if the stimulation continues, I will then hit subspace. But I also continue to climax, just in more of a realm where I'm not really that aware of what is happening around me. So those are kind of my 3 or 4 stages of climaxing.
I love that you break it down into the 4 levels. That's so interesting. And also, I'd like to highlight the fact that you use hand signals when you go nonverbal. It's really great for other people to hear that perhaps they should set that up as well in their sessions. If they're also likely to go nonverbal, it's great to have hand signals so you can keep that communication open.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I apologize.
No, please.
I was going to say, I actually am not the person who came up with I'm not the person in general who invented hand signals, but I was a consistent play partner that I have was the first one who actually suggested it, because he saw how easily, especially when I'm in bondage, how easily I will go into subspace after I've been in that third level of climaxes. And so he suggested, because usually, and I will also say when I'm in the second stage, which is I usually, if I'm going to say anything, I usually just say, I just repeat fuck over and over again. I'm like, oh, my vanilla religious mother would be so proud of me at this moment. And so he's like, I can usually, based on how you said the word fuck, I can usually tell where you are. He's like, but when you hit that third one, I don't have a clue what's going on other than you are just so overcome with passion. So he actually worked out, for example, red, or stop is the peace sign. And sometimes he'll ask me, he'll be like, please give me the peace sign, because you are so far in subspace. Like, I'm really concerned where you are at this moment. And it's like, I have to think for a while to figure out how to get my hands to go into the peace sign, but eventually I do. And so there's a couple. Yellow is more like a thumbs up peace sign. And I appreciate it. Works out really well when I'm in that zone.
So what's green? I'm sure people are curious to hear. They might adapt for themselves.
Well, green is, we actually don't have a sign for green, because he knows that I just want to keep climaxing until as long as I can go. So I do a thumbs up and it's yellow. He'll check in on, or other people, it's not just him, but whoever I'm with will check in and see where I am. And then if I, don't signal yellow again, or I've gone back to my repeating a fuck over and over again, they will go back to doing whatever they were doing. I've never, I have used the peace sign to red, primarily when that happens. So I'm really into rope as well. A couple of times I've been inverted and have gone into subspace while inverted, and I find that can really negatively impact like my whole sense of it being, and so I have a couple of times done the peace sign, and the person I'm with, who primarily does my rigging, will instantly lower me to the ground so that I can recover from that.
Right.
That's the primarily when I've done that. And then usually I have a break, drink a gallon of water, and then either go back to the activity or just take a break from that point. But whenever I've had to peace sign out of it, that has ended it until I've taken a break and I'm ready to talk again and negotiate from there.
That's really helpful for people to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the traditions on the show is that I ask guests to reflect on a famous quote about sexuality. And today's quote is from none other than Betty Dodson, who was one of the pioneers of sex-positive feminism. Betty once said, "There are as many kinds of orgasms as there are kinds of people." So I'd love to hear, does that ring true for you as a hyper-climaxer? Do you think everyone orgasms differently?
Absolutely. It very much rings true. As part of my exploration, I have played with women, non-binary, gender fluid, etc. And I find that even I've had an occasion played with other hyper-climaxers as well. And that's always an interesting, when that happens, I can think of 2 or 3 times that I've had the opportunity to have sex with someone who is also self-diagnosed hyper-climaxer. And even then, I've told them about my levels before, and I remember, at least in 2 of the conversations, that people were like, "Oh, that's really interesting. We've never really thought about it as levels before." But they agreed with me. They also felt like there were levels with them different than mine, and hyper-climaxing, and the few people that I've talked to online as well as in person, we tried to work out a definition one time. I remember there were 3 of us at a kink party and we were talking about being hyper-climaxers, and someone said, "Well, I feel like if you can climax more than 10 times in half an hour, that counts." And 2 of the others, myself and someone else, were like, "Oh, half an hour? We're talking, depending on what's happening to us. I mean, we could easily hit 100 in an hour or in a half an hour if there's a lot of stimulation or things that we're liking going on." So 10's like the first 10 seconds. And I joke, it's not 10 seconds. I think the fastest 10 I've ever climaxed is probably within 5 minutes. But
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, so yeah, people have very, very different ways that they climax. And it's not, I played with a couple for about the last year, and as well as some other people, and a woman that I played with for a while took a very, very long time to climax once. But when she would climax that one time, it was a humongous, just full body, kind of what I would call almost my 4th level of climaxing for that one climax. So even though it took her a long time to get there, it was this humongous, joyful, moment in her life. And my like level 1 climaxes that I do all the time, they're fun. I mean, they're nice release of endorphins, but they're not like, they're like my mild, they're my small climaxes, my moments. So yeah, I think every person's different, and hyper-climaxers, I mean, there's not really a working definition that I can find in any. I think there's very little research out there that I could tell, at least, that I could find on hyper-climaxing. But definitely there are some people who climax a lot and 10 times in half an hour, and those of us who can hit hundreds of times in half an hour. So, and everybody in between. So I think absolutely climaxing is often a very individual in how we think about climaxing. And then I know those that I talk to that are not hyper-climaxers, but still climax whatever they feel like they climax pretty consistently. Most of those people don't feel like there's any kind of levels. A friend of mine in the community said, "Look, I climax or I don't climax. Like there's build up to climax, I climax, it goes back down, and then I build back up again, climax." And she's just like, "Do not build up." And I go, "Well, kind of, but it's like a really fast build up." I mean, there's not necessarily this huge build up to some explosion of emotions. They're just kind of constantly happening. So it never really like backs down until usually I'm exhausted to the point that I ended. So yeah, very much. I think it's individual.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I hadn't thought about the actual definition of a hyper-climaxer before. I
Mm.
have to look into that and see what academics are saying. But if you had to define it based on your experiences and personal
Yes,
research, how would you define it?
I think it's anyone that can climax repeatedly over some definition of time.
Mm,
Um, and doesn't, at least that I can tell in the few people that I've, because it's not that common,
mm-hmm.
quite honestly. I mean, I realized in the 2 years that I've really been into exploring my sexuality, I've only encountered a couple people in person and then a couple more through FET and various posts where um, uh, people have posted. I remember somebody in my community, very nice person, posted that they had climaxed twice during sex and they were so excited. And I was like, twice?
Mm, mm-hmm.
That's, and I said something nice because I'm a nice person. I said, oh, that's great. Congratulations. And then internally, I'm like, twice? That
Mm,
is not how I would define. And they weren't defining it hyperclimax. They're just excited they'd hit that point. So I don't know what that number is. I think definitely it's got to be more than 10 in half an hour.
okay. Interesting.
What I can just from anecdotally from talking to people, most of us do not have really a downtime in between climaxes, that they just keep building on each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I realize this doesn't quite answer your question because I don't exactly know how to
Mm,
define it, but I was on a Sibian one time at or a motor bunny, one of those, at a party, and was very loudly and happily climaxing my lovely way on that one. And I remember somebody came over. I was really almost in subspace, so I don't even know how I process this. And they're like, "How many has she done? Is it just like, are they separate ones, or are they just like one big long one?" And I was kind of like, separate. And the person who was running the motor bunny said, I think it's just one big long one. She hasn't stopped. She just keeps going.
mm-hmm.
And so I think, though, how do you define that, right?
Mm,
To me, it felt like they were separate, but there wasn't necessarily a climax, or a build up,
mm-hmm.
climax, and then a build down. It's
Mm-hmm.
climax, go down maybe a little bit, climax, a little. So I think if I had to try and define it, a repeated climaxing, um, yes, in a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is not a great definition.
No,
So,
well, I think it's. I'm just thinking. Yeah, it's a really hard thing to define. I'll have to. Maybe
yeah,
I can ask some people on FetLife how they would define it, and we'll see if we can get
right.
some commonalities. Because yeah, it's really interesting to think about. I hadn't thought about it before, so thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm curious
And
now.
also,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was just going to say, for myself, I had no idea that this was. I mean, obviously that first dom helped me get that, but actually my second dom, the first time that we'd had sex and I climaxed and climaxed. At that point, I was really happy with about 30. Now I don't average 30 anymore. I average a lot more. But he was the one that actually said, it has a name. It's called, you're a hyper-climaxer, and this is not something that a lot of people can do. And I was
Right.
like, oh, really? So he was actually the one that, because I vanilla religious enough that it wasn't aware of this being.
Mm.
Now, of course, I'm like, woohoo, it's my superpower. So
I love it. So, do you think this is something that you've always had? Is it something
yeah.
that you were born with, or do you think it's something that you had to train into yourself a little
Mhm.
bit?
So I definitely think I was born with it. I think because I had such a vanilla religious upbringing, I mean, I didn't ever masturbate until I was married, because in the religion I grew up in, masturbation is considered a sin.
Mm,
You have no, I mean, very, all I did with my husband before we were married is kiss, and not even French kissing, just a mild little peck on the lips.
mhm.
Um, so I never had an opportunity in my life to really explore in any way, um, climaxing a lot would be. And then during my marriage, I also married a virgin who grew up in the same religion I did that had no clue. I think I was the first woman he'd ever seen naked. And our sex life was, like I said, was awful. And so it really, I always knew that I could climax quickly, that I didn't require much foreplay or really any foreplay to climax, but I didn't realize that once you climax once, that you could continue to climax. I mean, that the thought of that had never really, everything I'd read or seen in movies, it's kind of like people would climax once and woohoo, move on with their lives. So it really wasn't until I found Fet and really found that first Dom that he recognized that I had that ability. And so really, as I practiced making myself climax and thinking about different ways and climax once and then it kept going. So it's really something I practiced, but I think it's something that I always had. I just didn't have the skills or the knowledge to really pursue it until I got into a much more sexual realm here on Fet and meeting people. And I really wanted to explore and try new things. And so I used to, when I first started out and I was playing with people, I used to tell them that I averaged about 20 climaxes during sex. And I now tell people I average about 50 and times climaxing during sex. The number, only if I have really bad sex with somebody, which at this point I hope is less. I find, actually, from a personality standpoint, a lot of people, a lot of men who are more Dom or high protocol Doms really don't like playing with me because I'm unwilling to try and hold my climaxing in.
Right.
This is why I'm really not a good sub either, because I had a Dom for a while that was like, are you holding your, don't climax. You can only climax with permission. I'd be like, okay. And I'd ask permission. He wouldn't give it. I'd climax anyway, and I just didn't care. So I'm not a good sub. And then he'd be like, are you holding it? I'd be like, yes, of course. I'd like climax 5 more times. Like, okay, now you can climax. And I'd be like, oh, great. And then I'd climax. And he's like, oh, see, it doesn't make it so much better since you held it. And I'm like, sure, whatever, bud. Yes. And I'm unwilling to hold back or try to, I'm horrible. I can't edge. I mean, potentially I could, but I love climaxing. I love that feeling. I love that endorphin rush. I love everything else, everything about it. And so for me, I'm not willing to attempt to edge. Because I can keep climaxing. So what I found in terms of partners work best are people who like to see me climax and who get pleasure from seeing how much I can keep climaxing. So like a recent sex that I had with a more consistent partner that we've had sex quite a few times. He got me up to like, he likes to count. I can't count. I hit subspace and I'm like la la land. But he got to about 250 climaxes and then he stopped counting.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, no, my record is 500.
Whoa.
And that was on I was on a fucking machine and I had a clit stimulator on at the same time, and I was also in bondage, which I really quite enjoy. And yeah, I hit about 500 in an hour.
How amazing.
Because it was just, I mean, I was being fucked with a fucking machine and had constant stimulation on my clit. And so it was just, yeah. And I'd actually really like to try that again, because I think that was that was probably about 8 months ago on that one. I think I could hit even higher. I stopped on that one because I was afraid that I was going to do like major damage to my internal organs if I kept going. But, I was okay. I was a little sore the next day. But yeah, I can hit and in so 250. If I'm in bondage, I can hit a couple hundred relatively easily, just because because I climax so easily without, like I said, without much foreplay. I can just start climaxing. So
Incredible. In terms of not
Yeah.
liking to be edged or being told not to orgasm, that makes sense to me because you waited so long to explore your sexuality, right? So why would you
Yes.
keep waiting?
Indeed. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I should ask Fet to add a new category, be a climax chaser. And that's probably
Nice.
the best description of me. I really like to have pleasure, and I can get pleasure from a lot of different ways. So obviously sex. I like I've mentioned multiple times, I really like bondage and I really like rope bondage. I like suspensions, but I can also climax off of impact play as well. And
Amazing.
so I really appreciate that walking that line between um, pain and pleasure. And so sometimes if you put me in ropes, bondage, and then spank or whip me, we're definitely gonna hit several hundred right off the bat, because that is just like everything all together. So I do find that again, with anything with kink, that I do have to find those people who like to see someone climaxing and enjoy my climaxes. It was impact play and pick up impact play. I always tell people I'd come with a warning label. If you hit me or whatever you're going to do, I'm going to climax. And if you are not comfortable with somebody climaxing by your actions, then we're probably not a good fit to play. And so I have found people in the community who do not want to play with me for any kind of impact play, or who are maybe whips is one of the big ones, because I climax so much as well as squirt, but climaxing as well. I stay very, very wet. And so if you go to whip me between my legs, your whip is going to get wet. And I really try to emphasize this with people, because I definitely have had a couple of experiences where people are like, my whip, leather is wet. How am I supposed to sanitize it? And I'm like, well, let's go get some wet wipes or something. But yeah, or just don't whip me between my legs, because I will definitely, there's things that you never think about, right? That because most people are not wet enough. There are some people who, when they do penetrative sex on me, some people really like more of that resistance. There's not much resistance. Because I just climax so much that I'm very, very wet. And so I have had sex with people before who have said, they're not interested in having sex with me again because it is too wet. So that is I'm like, oh darn, that seems like a you problem, not a me problem. But it's and I think anyone who's been in the community, we can think of people like that who potentially would not enjoy. Or I find there are also people who, especially anyway, younger people for the most part, but who are like, well, I really wait and I really do all my efforts until the woman climaxes, and then when she climaxes, then I can focus on myself and my own pleasure. And I'm like, well, you touch my bare nipple and I will have climax. So
Mm-hmm. While we're on that topic, I'm curious, have you faced much judgment or misunderstanding around this part of your sexuality, or has it just been more people's preferences?
Definitely somewhat yes and somewhat no. Definitely when I was still trying to be a sub, that's where I found the most resistance, because I was really trying to meet people who identified as DOMs, and I'd be their sub, and again, I'm not a sub, as we can tell. But the constant climaxing and didn't work with any of the situations, and actually ultimately led to the end of all of those 5 relatively short times with DOMs. Not if for no other reason than I was not willing to try and hold back or edge or any of those things. I found more judgment. I think I'm a very tall plus size woman, and I have found more people that are more based off my size or my weight, potentially more than the climaxing. But there are definitely people who are who don't quite know what to do with me, because if someone climaxes that much and constantly, I know I've annoyed people before that I've played with who were just like, "Can you just stop climaxing, please? Just stop for a moment. Like it's too much, just too much." And I'm like, people tell me I'm too much in any aspect of my life, so why not have your in sex life as well? I personally always bring a waterproof blanket with me whenever I go to play with anyone. That's one thing that I've just had to do because I squirt and I climax so much I get everything wet. So I always, whenever I go someplace, I pull around my little blanket with me. Yeah, I think anytime you're a woman in any kind of kink situation, there's some judgment that always goes on. But I think maybe it's, at least for me, I've always felt like it's less my climaxing and more my body size, type, height. I don't know, though. That might just be my own insecurities.
Why do you think they've told you to stop, some of these people, to stop coming? Because a lot of men out there and women would be listening and thinking it's such a gift, but yet some people are saying don't experience it. Why do you think that happens?
I think some people think that I maybe am pretending to do it. I think there's some of that goes into it because it's like I think if you've never seen anyone climax to the degree that I climax, it can be like, well, she's just faking it. There's no humanly possible way that person is climaxing that much. So I do think there's some people who think I am just faking it.
Right.
And I do think there are a group of people, not even like from a gender perspective, just a group of people who are so focused and have so much history of, well, I'm really going to focus on that person until they climax, and then then we switch to then I'm going to focus more on myself. So what do I do? What do I do with this person who's I kissed her and she's already like 5 climaxes in? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I have I'm because I am bisexual, pansexual. I do have a tendency to play with couples, and I really have appreciated that. And I find sometimes, I hate to say it's jealousy because I don't think it's necessarily jealousy, but there's maybe a twinge that, I'm over here climaxing a lot and the other woman I'm with is not. And I sometimes think that there's some interesting dynamics that I've had people that I've played with before say, tell the man, especially their husbands. I usually play with couples. Honey, I can't climax like her. Like, that might be your new thing, your new kink, but I there's no way I can humanly climax like that. And I always think it's an interesting commentary because I can't do whatever like that person, and that's just the reality that there's some of that goes in as well. I do think there are people who legitimately like to see people climax and it gives them pleasure. And those I have, especially over the last year, those are the people that I really seek out. I want to find people who it gives them sexual pleasure for me to climax the way that I climax. And I find that if I can find people that already have that baseline that they like to see people climax, that we usually have more sexual connection than people who don't already have that, is that they know it's one of their kinks is to see somebody climax.
I'd love to get into some research with you now on the female
Absolutely.
orgasm. So when we think about sexual responsiveness, we often focus on the mechanics, the body, stimulation, chemistry. But research is revealing something deeper. In 2011, there was a study done by Silverstein and colleagues that found that mindfulness training, the simple act of slowing down and paying attention without judgment, actually increased women's sexual arousal and body awareness, even in those women who had had previous sexual difficulties. Why does this matter? It's because our minds can either block or amplify pleasure, right? Mindfulness teaches the nervous system to stay present with sensation instead of shutting it down. It rewires how we relate to arousal. So this can turn what might have once been numb or shameful into something alive, expansive, and deeply felt. And when you hear stories like yours of someone who can climax hundreds of times, it raises powerful questions. Could erotic sensitivity be as much about psychological safety and awareness as it is about the body itself? So the study found that mindfulness seems to enhance body awareness and even arousal in women. Have you ever found that slowing down, being completely present in your body, changed the way your orgasm felt or how many unfolded?
So yes and no. Actually, that brings up a really interesting point. I can climax with absolutely no physical sensation at all, either by myself or someone else. So I live by a big city and often get stuck in bad traffic. And if I'm by myself in my car, I will often think of something erotic and climax in my car
Mm.
to pass the time.
Hmm.
So in that sense, absolutely, I can connect to. Um, I would say that I would look at probably my more like level 3 and 4 climaxes. Getting to those quicker if I'm really. I have found I have a couple play partners that I play with pretty consistently over the last year, and that really I feel like we have a good sense of what each of us like. And I find that when I'm specifically with those people, I can climax a lot more than if I'm with someone that I haven't ever had sex with or
Hmm.
been erotic with, because I can be more focused on my own pleasure and thinking about it than necessarily thinking about what the other person wants, or just any kind of the newness. So I can see how that would impact could impact as well. I definitely I've never thought of myself as very demi. I can have sex with somebody and be very stimulated and have lots of climaxes on the first time ever meeting anyone.
Mm.
But the sex is definitely better and the climaxes are deeper, and I go much more into those very deep subspace level climaxes if I have perfect trust in the person that I'm with. So I can definitely see that as being something that I have never really thought about before, but I can see that in my life.
Mm. Do you think the ability to climax repeatedly is partially tied to how attuned you are to subtle shifts in sensation? So, could it be not just about intensity, but about awareness of sensations or thoughts that you're having?
Yes. And I do think I've had several people tell me as well, and I would agree with them, that in part because I never really had what I would call good sex,
Mm.
however we want to define that, until I was 42 years old. So in the last 2 years. And so in many ways, and I currently live alone. So I do feel like a lot of times in my life I'm touch starved. I miss the companionship of being with people. I do think when I have those opportunities to be with people, that I really am really focused on the experience, because I don't have those opportunities in my life all the time. So I really
Hmm.
try to be very present in the experience and in the engagement with whoever I am, because I very much treasure those moments. And I've had people say, you're making up for all those lost years. And I do think there is an element of that. Although I seem to be increasing in the amount I climax, not
Mm.
decreasing. So
Hmm.
practice makes perfect, I suppose. Oh,
Now, some women in the study reported that mindfulness helped them reframe sensations that they previously ignored. Do you
mm.
think part of your hyperorgasmic capacity comes from embracing sensations that others might overlook or push past?
Yes, I consider myself a sensualist. I very much in enjoy any kind of touch, whether hands, any kind of skin on skin contact, but also rope on skin, feathers on skin, impact on skin, any type of touch of my body. I very much enjoy, turns me on, causes me to climax. And so I think impact play is probably the best example of that, because nobody would say that necessarily impact play by itself is a great sexual turn on, but just even being spanked really hard, or whipped, or having some kind of impact play that also, which would not necessarily be a positive sensation, is it definitely brings pain, but that also causes me to climax and enjoy the climax from it. So I think in that sense, yes, that definitely those sensations, am I being in tune with those sensations very, very much, positively increase my climaxing.
So, do you think you're just naturally in tune with those sensations, or have you explored mindfulness or meditation to deepen that?
I have explored meditation and
Mm.
mindfulness. I honestly never have thought I'm very good at meditation. My brain has a tendency, I've actually, to just always be thinking about new things and flitting from topic to topic. I suspect that I'm undiagnosed ADHD due to my working with anyway, various populations that also are ADHD type situations. And so I've always felt that I'm a colossal failure at meditation because I have a very hard time emptying my mind
Mm.
of all thought. In general, I would say the most at peace in them. And one thing that I have really found from both subspace as well as climaxes, but I'll just go to subspace. When I go into subspace, my mind completely goes blank. It's like all the 1,000 tabs open in my mind shut off,
Mm.
and I am in a. I always feel like my brain is just black, like it's just a blank canvas, and and it's where I go nonverbal because I cannot connect words together to make any kind of meaning at all. So I find that sex and subspace and climaxing is where I am best able to empty my mind and not think about anything else other than
Mm.
what's happening at that time.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to someone who wants to experience more pleasure but feels disconnected from their body? Where do you think they should begin?
I honestly don't know exactly how to answer that because I am
Mm.
so. I think if it was possible to empty your mind, to go into any kind of sensual experience and not be thinking about all the things that we think about, what am I going to make for dinner? What bills do I need to pay? What big stress do I have coming up in life? And you could just to go into something and just focus on the experience that you are participating in,
Mm-hmm.
that would be one way, which would be a mindfulness and meditative more state that you're leaving the outside world behind when you go into
Mm.
that would be one way to really focus into much more of that sensual state of being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being present is so important. It's something to practice as well. For some people, it just doesn't
Absolutely.
come naturally. Yeah.
Yeah.
As part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share, such as a quote, book, or a
Mm-hmm.
movie that's influenced your sexuality. Can you share with us
Absolutely.
what you've brought along today and how it shaped your understanding of your erotic realm?
Yes. So I love to read and really into all sorts of different things, but I really love the poem by Robert Frost called "The Road Not Taken," and it's the two roads diverged in a Yellowwood, which I think is in the United States. Almost every high school student has had to read this in their English class,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the very last stanza of that poem says, or the last three lines of it is, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And for me, I really relate to that in my life. I felt like up until age 40, I was very much going, very religious, very vanilla, planning. I was dating, but obviously not having sex with anyone. And I thought that would be like my trajectory unless I ever got remarried, of this very celibate, non sexual anything life for the rest of my life. And I very much, right at 40, well, really 42, completely diverged and went the
Mm-hmm.
road less traveled by definitely by anybody in my life or that I knew, left my religion mostly behind, definitely left my vanilla life behind, and is now very much on this completely, from a sexual perspective, trajectory than where I was.
And will you ever leave this trajectory, or are you on this path for good now?
I think it'll be very hard to ever leave this path. I really enjoy climaxing and enjoy the benefits that have come into my life by being much more interested in sex and much more interested in sensual play and much more interested in so many things. I feel like I've established very much a community, both the local as well as a FET online community of people who understand, that I can have conversations with about anything kind of sexual, and find people who understand and embrace that and celebrate me in many ways that I yes, definitely never found in my very religious vanilla previous trajectory of life. So, barring any major anything, I don't see myself leaving my exploration of kink and my desire to climax as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. When I mentioned to my listeners that I was about to interview a hyper-climactic woman today, there were a lot of questions. Normally, I pick only one listener question to ask my guest,
Okay.
but there were quite a few questions for you, so I picked several to ask you today. Hope that's okay.
Okay. Absolutely.
Great. So let's start with the most direct one. How long does it typically take you to climax?
It seconds.
Wonderful.
Like I said, I can climax by myself sitting in traffic. I several of the people that play with me pretty that are consistent play partners will laugh that as they're walking up the stairs to my house, they already know that I'm climaxing as I wait for them to come. I joke that you can kiss me and I will climax. Definitely level 1. Level 2 require a little bit more time to get to a level 2. That's minutes. 3, which is the deeper ones where I'm starting to get closer and closer to subspace, a few more minutes. And I've hit subspace before in like less than 5 minutes. So wow. It depends. One play partner that I play with the most frequently, he laughs because he can simply touch me anywhere fully clothed and I will have already hit like level 3. I'm completely tuned to, and I trust him completely, and we have had the most exploration together over the last year. Other people, if I've never met somebody before, it maybe will take a few more seconds, but yeah, I can do a level 1 climax almost instantaneously.
Amazing. I have another question here. Do you notice distinctions between clitoral, vaginal, anal, and breast or other kinds of stimulation that cause you to orgasm? And if so, how would you describe those differences?
Yeah, so the placement is so like I said, I level 1 particularly, I can climax from absolutely anywhere, even just thinking about something erotic or thinking about kissing somebody, I can climax. But definitely from different, so just being touched anywhere on my body, I level 1 climax. I can climax purely from nipple stimulation, whether that's sucking, biting, pinching, pulling, nipple clamps, whatever. I can hit a subspace from just nipple stimulation.
Wow.
I really enjoy, I've heard that's not very, very common either. So woo, there we go. I can also hit a level 4 for, I really enjoy clit stimulation. And unlike most people, I really like really hard, rough, lots of pressure. I also like nipple clamps on my clit. I really like strong pressure on both my nipples as well as my clit, and I can climax. I mean, somebody can just touch my clit and I'll climax and usually hit and usually squirt too. I always tell people, if you give me oral on my clit, I will squirt in your face. I mean, it's almost an instantaneous situation. Just a mouth of my clit, just off I go. I like vaginal sex as well, and I climax off. It's not my necessarily my preferred. I'd much rather climax from touch, nipples, or clit. I do squirt a lot when I have vaginal sex, but I squirt from the other ones too. So I like sex, but definitely nipples and clit. Anal, I really don't like anal. I've had anal twice in my life, both with they're good experiences both times. So it wasn't like it was a bad experience. I climax as well, but it's like there are so many other more fun places to climax that require so much less effort. And training, it's like, what's the point? So I don't have anal sex anymore. I haven't had anal sex for a year, but I don't mind like a finger in my ass. And one of my partners loves using an anal hook, and I quite enjoy that as well. So I definitely climax from anal stimulation as well. It's not my preferred necessarily, unless it's somebody that I really trust. Well, the partner that really likes anal hooks, for example, and he knows that if I haven't squirted for a while, all he has to do is stick his finger in my ass, and I will instantaneously squirt on him. So that does be connected more to squirting. We had talked at the beginning. I'm not huge into feet, but if you want to rub my feet, I'll climax as well. It's just really any kind of skin climaxing. Is that a thing? If you touch, I'll climax. Kissing, I'll climax. I really like French kissing. Obviously, I like my ears. I like my ears sucked on and played with. I'm really if your goal is to see if I can climax, I can satisfy that by you just asking me to climax. I can climax on command.
Wow.
Because that seems to be, but that's mostly because less their command and more I'm going along with it to be, they're like climax. And so I'll climax because I can instantaneously climax. Squirting usually have to be in a deeper sense. I squirt more from nipples and clit and vaginal than the other ones, but.
Right. So you just mentioned squirting. One listener asked about this and they wanted to know whether for you, does squirting feel orgasmic and if it's its own kind of orgasm, or is it the result of another type of orgasm that you're having?
So I usually squirt when I am I can start squirting if I'm in a level 2 climax. I never squirt off of just the first level where I'm just my body shaking. I've never squirted at that point. But I have squirted at a level 2 where it's at a deeper, and level 3 and 4, and I can squirt in subspace as well, although I'm completely out of it and I just see the puddle that is there after I kind of come back to reality. Squirting for me is a very orgasmic sensation as well. I don't just squirt. Actually, I just had a conversation on this on FET where someone's like, squirting doesn't bring me any pleasure. And that I'm not that case. Squirting is a very pleasurable experience for me. Squirting happens usually as I'm climaxing. Sometimes though, I will squirt either like in between climaxes. So I will climax, squirt, climax, but usually they happen at the same time. But I am climaxing constantly. So it's hard to separate the two of them. I do squirt, like I said, if I climax 100 times, I'll squirt 20. So it is less frequently, and it's usually that. But yes, it's when I'm feeling very, very aroused and having those very deep level climaxes that I'll squirt.
Another listener had this question. Have you discovered any practices or techniques, solo or partnered, that help deepen or expand your orgasms even more?
Definitely consistent play. Having consistent play partners. For example, one of the people that I play with that really is into bondage, so am I, and into rope bondage. I will often hit 300, 400, 500 climaxes with him. And he also really enjoys being squirted on. So the fact that I know he enjoys that often means that I find that I hit a very high number of climaxes with him because he likes that. And he also likes to put me in bondage. He likes to hang me upside down from right at the ceiling in rope. And he's very much into oral. So he likes all the things that I find to be incredibly erotic. And so I climax a lot more and squirt a lot more with him than if it was just someone that I've met and chatted to and it's our first time meeting. I'm probably not necessarily going to hit like 200 climaxes, but I'm still probably, if he's also a sensualist and enjoys it and does the things that I really like, then yeah, I mean, he can easily see 100 climaxes with me. I usually tell people I average 50, so like no pressure on me to
Amazing.
If I don't get higher than that. It's so I find it's just a lot of the time who they are and what they like. Because normally you can tell someone really like, because I'm there climaxing and shaking and and someone's like, oh, that's wonderful. I love to see a climax for me again. I want to see you climax. I mean, that's good reinforcement, and I will continue to climax, as opposed to people are like, okay, when's she gonna stop? Is she gonna stop here ever? Then I'm like, okay, rein it in, type thing, and maybe climax as often. But when I can just go all out and just enjoy it, yeah, those people are going to have lots of climaxes, and it's going to get wet. Lots of squirts.
You mentioned the experience with a partner being tied up in rope and having hundreds of orgasms. Is that a peak erotic experience for you? I'm so curious how you would answer that question. What is a peak erotic experience that you've had?
So I really like being in bondage. This is where my sub elements come up. I personally really get off in being in any kind of bondage situation. I really like rope. I find that rope, that sensation on my skin that rope provides, to be its own level of highly erotic moments, because I like the sensations. I really enjoy feeling very exposed with people I trust. And so that is, and then I really enjoy like nipple sucking pressure, clit sucking pressure. So people who really give me those things that I really desire in sexual, and not everybody likes oral, and not everybody likes nipple sucking. And so I don't ever insist on it. But if someone, in this case, this one play partner I have, really likes to do all the things that I really like to be done to me, and so he really sees lots of more climaxing than somebody else. Another play partner I have really enjoys more impact and spanking and less of he's not really big into, he's not a nipple person very much. He'll rub my clit because he likes it, or he likes to see reaction. So he won't experience like 500 climaxes. He'll experience maybe 200 climaxes, because of things that he's doing is still very stimulating and is still very much climax. But because he's not tying me up in rope, he's not going to get the same number that the person who does tie me up in rope is getting.
It sounds like you have some great play partners at the moment. I'm really happy for you that you're exploring in that way.
Absolutely. And I appreciate finding them. I'm actually in the process of moving quite a distance away. And so, yeah, actually, as I start into a new journey, it's going to be interesting to see who I can find. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, well, good luck with finding great play partners in your new space.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had to sum up your sexuality in just one word, what would that be for you, thinker?
Pleasure is probably what I would go for as one word. I'm very much a pleasure seeker, and looking for people who also get pleasure from having me have pleasure. So that would be what I would go with, is pleasure.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank you for being so open and sharing yourself with me and our listeners today, thinker.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast. Thank you for listening to the Erotic Realm. If this episode stirred something in you, please take a moment to follow the show, leave a rating, or write a review on wherever you're listening. It helps more people find the show and brings visibility to this deeper conversation about eroticism and self-understanding. I'd also like to invite you to dive deeper into the psychology of desire, including my writing, research, and upcoming courses over at psychologyofdesire.com. And if you want the full experience, join thousands of curious minds on my Substack at psychologyofdesire.substack.com. This is where I release the Psychology of Desire case files, behind-the-scenes thoughts, and intimate reflections every week, plus more. Until next time, stay curious, stay embodied, and keep exploring. Also, as always, stay perverted.